Hello and welcome. Today we are going to talk about attachment needs, and connection, and how to walk through how to be connected in a healthy way, specifically when we're having a discussion with somebody. So today what we're going to cover is we're going to cover this really cool document right here. So what it includes is, if you can see it here, this is going to be, let's see if we can zoom it in here. There we go. So the general idea is all of us have a desire to be connected, okay? And in that connection, we call it attachment, which is a term that I've learned a ton about through people like Sue Johnson, John Gottman, Brene Brown. I'll list a link down below with a lot of my favorite attachment theory individuals to help give you kind of a guide and a reference for this. Today we're going to focus on this document specifically, which I got from Sue Johnson's work, which will help you better communicate with the people that you love or the people that you want to be connected with. So what we have at the bottom here is we have attachment needs. All of us have specific needs that need to be met, similar to the idea that you need water and food and light in relation to having a garden. Okay, so in all relationships, there are certain needs that we have as well. So you can see here at the bottom, we need things like feeling loved, feeling accepted, feeling wanted, feeling like we're enough, feeling safe, feeling like we belong, and connection. Okay? And so it's really, really important for you to understand that when those needs are not met, what happens is sometimes we can have an injury in relation to our relationship, or because those needs are not met, similar to when you do not water your garden enough, that relationship is going to wither a little bit. Now, what we do is we have an emotion that happens within 0.3 of a second, faster than you can blink an eye. What will happen is we're going to respond in a certain way. And the reason for the response, the why behind the response, is that I need to save this relationship. It's important to me. Now, some are more important than others, but we're going to say this is an important relationship. So we're going to do one of two things, okay? We're either going to save the relationship by withdrawing, okay? Or we're going to save the relationship by pursuing. Now, these are the unhealthy versions of that, relatively speaking, so I just want to be clear about that. But this is the most common ways in which this is done. So what happens is as we go down to the bottom again, we can see that there are certain needs that need to be met. When we're not feeling these needs, or when we're hurt in relationship, then you can see here there's a section right here and right here where those are emotions that we feel very, very quickly. Boom! Hurt, fear, abandoned, alone, unwanted, hopeless, unimportant. There's a variety here. This is not an extensive list, but this is a great place to start. And so what happens is most of us have 3 different ways in which we interact with those emotions that are really painful. Either we try and shove it down, we try and move away from it, or we try and project it on somebody else. Okay? That's going to be related to this pursue withdraw component. So what happens is we feel that emotion and we're like, we got to move away from this. And so then we pop up above this line. And what that means is this is like in a kitchen when there's a fire on the stove. Okay? These are those emotions. So think of it from that perspective. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, we don't like the fire in the kitchen. I'm going to run into the living room. So what happens is we move into what's called a secondary emotion. And this secondary emotion are things like anger and rage and frustration and jealousy and anxiety and resentment. Okay? Those secondary emotions are way easier to feel, right? Because we're a little ways from the heat. We're out in the living room. Now we're still getting the smoke. Okay? Mind you, the smoke is very uncomfortable as well. So this is when you're getting out in the weeds. You're just talking about random stuff. Oh, well, you did this and this and this. Oh, well, you did this and this and this and this, right? So it's like trying to take a fire extinguisher and going out into your living room and spraying everywhere with the smoke. It's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to put the fire out. It might make you feel good for a minute, and then it all goes away. It didn't really help any. And as a matter of fact, you just use all your fire extinguisher, and now you don't have any energy left to go into the kitchen and actually deal with the issue, which was this, okay, and put the fire out. So what that's going to look like is when you're up in this emotion, this secondary emotion, generally speaking, we do one of two things, which is going to be either pursue the person, right? That's part of that projection idea I mentioned before. Specifically on this chart, this is the pursue component, right? So what that's going to look like is you might be critical or hostile or aggressive or attack. Now, if you're going to move away, if you're trying to literally run away or avoid the emotional situation of that or really shove it down, what that's going to look like is maybe you're going to shut down, you're going to silence yourself, you're going to distance yourself, you're going to become defensive, right? So all of those things might happen in your relationship, because really what you're doing is you had something happen or you had something that didn't happen, and there's a problem now with the relationship. And so now what needs to happen is I'm going to try and do this, or I'm going to try and do this in order to be able to save the relationship. And that's probably not the healthiest thing, because the reality is again, when you're spraying the living room smoke, it's not fixing anything. So what happens is if you can work with the relationship and really, whether it be, if you can't do this yourself, this is where it's really helpful to either come to someone like myself or a licensed counselor who knows how to work with attachment theory, which I will put some links for some local attachment therapists below if you're interested. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to hold space for and get back down here and see what these basic needs are. Now, generally speaking, if you want to look at something like Maslow's hierarchy, safety is going to be the number one situation. So this does not apply to situations where there are really intense and inappropriate circumstances. Those are a different case scenarios. So we're not talking about those. We're talking about a relationship where people are really trying to work something out and they want help and you're just stuck. So the general idea is you work on the safety piece first, right? The ideal would be to be able to sit and hold space. For example, I had a discussion just the other day with a set of patients, a mother-daughter situation, where one of the most important things that we talked about initially was we need to provide safety. So if one is, or both parties are not safe, that's where you need to start. You need to be able to hold space for and validate and see, hey, it looks like, you know, you might be upset, or something along the lines of, is everything okay? I see that, you know, I can see that it looks like there's maybe an injury that I have done. And so what we want to do is we want to avoid attacking the person and doing our best to see and validate their circumstance first, and or be able to express our own emotions, right? If you don't have capacity to be able to see the other person, and in the most ideal situation in validation, which is literally to express to them almost more efficiently than they expressed how they're feeling and they feel seen and heard. If you don't have capacity for that, then go to the base idea here, which is to go to your primary emotion, right? So that might look like, hey, you know, I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling afraid I might lose you. I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling sadness and hurt. And do your best to express, when you have capacity, those base emotions. What that will do is, rather than attacking the other person and trying to point fingers at them, which is putting you up here, it actually gets you to go into the kitchen. And as you go into the kitchen, you're able to pull the fire extinguisher out and start cooling down the fire, because you're expressing what's happening on your side, right? And there's other little nuances that go along in here too, which I may incorporate it here at the end, but that's the general idea. If you want to be able to heal a relationship, start with what you have control over and let go of what you don't have control over. You do not have control over the other person. You may be able to influence the other person, but the most effective way to influence the other person is to be able to focus on and recognize where you're injured. You have control over that. You can express in a kind and respectful manner what the original injury is. And what that does is that allows you to be able to go internally, see what the actual issue is, express to the other person that I'm hurting. And generally speaking, if they care about you, they most of the time care if they're hurting you and or if you're hurting, which then allows them the opportunity to also express their emotions. And what I've seen with this situation and with this beautiful document time and time again is that attachment is then started to be nourished, and the healing has begun, and you start receiving love and connection again. You start receiving that acceptance. You start feeling wanted again. You start feeling like you're enough. You start receiving the safety. You belong and you're connected, which then nourishes that relationship the same as it would nourish a plant in your garden. So again, just kind of a high level overview, this document is about allowing us to connect with and have a good frame of reference of knowing how to nourish, how to work through the process of being attached, and know what our needs are and get our needs met so that we can further our relationships, further our attachments, which really is one of the biggest bases for life itself. There is a lot of research that shows, and/or Dan Siegel, which is also one of my favorite authors, he talks about the fact that for children growing up, one of the most important things that we can give them is love. That provides them the ability to grow, to be able to have attachment, to be able to get their needs met, to be able to live life. So that applies to you. If you're a human, if you're breathing, if you're eating, if you're drinking, this applies to you. And if these needs are not getting met, this is a really important document to have. So what I wanted to do was, in the link down below, if you'd like to have a copy of this, you can click on the little button and have one sent to you. So if you want to improve your relationships, this is going to be a document that's going to make a huge difference in your life. A couple little nuances to note at the very end. Generally speaking, when you pursue a relationship, let's say one party is pursuing the other person and the other person is constantly withdrawing, okay? If you withdraw, and the other one is pursuing, eventually sometimes we get tired of pursuing, and you can see this little line right here that drops down here. And so after a period of time, sometimes our energy runs out to even pursue the other person. And then what happens is you drop into a withdrawal pattern. And just like magnets, when you move them apart, they stop losing their ability to want to be connected to each other. So that's not a good place to be when that's happening. Again, this needs to be done in safety. If you don't feel safe having this conversation with someone, please make sure that you connect with somebody that's going to be a third party that has training that will provide that safety for you, so you can facilitate this sort of an exchange so you can live your best and healthiest life. So this is some of the most important stuff I've ever seen in all my studies of research, of medicine, of health, of the brain, of holistic mental health. This is going to make a huge difference in your life if you will allow yourself to learn it and to utilize it in your life. So this is Dr. Fisher wishing you the best, giving you lots of luck with this, and I know it works. And I'm signing out for the day. We'll talk to you soon.